Well, good day everyone. Thanks for joining and hope you're well. Yes, I've recently purchased another Simionic product. Big fan of their stuff, and there's a fair bit of Simionic equipment that I have in the rig here already. This time around, I've decided to replace my standby gauges, and so I've bought the Simionic standby gauges, and I'll show you some of that detail in a moment. The reason for the change? Well, there's nothing technically wrong with the standby gauges I've currently got. They are all functional, they all do work, but there's been a couple of issues that I've been having that's ongoing. Firstly, more so from the night flying and just general backlighting, there is none. And I've really struggled to get some backlighting into it. I guess if I was to persevere, I probably could think of something, but some of it's not that easy for backlighting, certainly from my perspective. But again, I'm not saying that's not solvable. You could probably solve it yourselves over time. That's one. And the second point is I've had a couple of servos that keep breaking on me, and what I mean by that is they just don't function anymore, and then I've obviously had to go back in and reset new servers and so on. So unless I got a bad batch, I'm having to change out a few servers over time. Now that just could be a power regulation thing, perhaps from the PC or something like that. I don't know. But realistically, it's enough to annoy me a bit. So I thought, well, why not? And I've been looking at those standby gauges with Simionic for a while. Again, I like the idea that they are independent of the sim itself, so they're not dragging additional monitors out and therefore adding to your graphical load. They go independently via USB through. So we'll cover some of that detail in a moment. But there you go. So these are going to come out, and I'm going to replace those with Simionic. So let's jump into the next part and let me show you what I've got and what I need to do to be able to reconfigure this panel section here, which is in two sections, by the way, to get the new Simionics in. Alright, so here we are with everything unboxed from the Simionic unit. I've got the 4 gauges here to replace my existing standby gauges, and now obviously I've got to get the panel redone for that. So we should show the panel, but yeah, here they are. They're all exactly the same in terms of physical dimensions, and don't have to get into too much detail, but they're daisy chained between them, which is this interface cable here, which will be at the back of each, and I'll show that once it's all hooked up through to the panel. But yeah, there we go. There's the 4. I've got 4 of those. Obviously, some screws to mount them, some USB-A to USB-C connectors, because there is a USB-C connector at the back of each of those, and only one needs to go to the PC. The other 3, basically, because of the data is actually transmitted through the daisy chain. The other ones can just be to a USB power source. I'll actually probably just plug them all of them into the PC individually, because it'll provide that USB power. The other thing I've got in the bag as well is some spare cables that they sent me through, but these were USB-C to USB-C, so I mean you can use them, but I think I'm just going to run with my USB-C with USB-A, and that'll go in nicely. So let's have a look at what I need to do now in relation to the new panel. Okay, so here we are in Fusion 360. What I've got up on the screen here is the downloaded DXF file that you can get from Simionic. And once you've got that DXF file, that's obviously the cutouts that you'll need for the various gauges. The one that you get from Simionic is the 6-pack configuration as shown here. And obviously I've got mine in a linear, which I'll show you in a moment, but that's okay because I can just use these from a template point of view and obviously go 1, 2, 3, and then I'll just grab a standard one with 4-hole mounting point there. So that's what I'll use for the purpose of setting out my new one. So over to my new panel, which is here. Now I've just coloured the back panel there yellow just so you can see the overlay what I've got, and this is now in the new configuration. Now I've got my panel in 2 halves. That's because of the size of the 3D printer. My bed size is 300 by 300, so you know, and this is well in excess of 300 overall, so you're not going to fit that on one bed, but that's what I've done here. So you can see I've just transposed in the Fusion 360 ones there, across that, and then split the body down the middle, so I've got it in two halves. Raised lettering through that as per the other one. This will be printed in white PLA, show you that in a moment, and then we'll spray paint that into the gloss grey to the same colour as what we've got there. And that's pretty much it. It's relatively straightforward. Yeah, so print out a new set of those, and then hopefully that will mount pretty easily once we put it all together. So pretty straightforward, really. Yeah, again, just download the DXF file if you're in Fusion or any other. In fact, you could probably use that in itself. I don't quite know. We could probably just check to see what that dimension is. It's probably going to be a bit too big for anyone's bed, I would imagine. Yeah, 320 millimeters across by, what's it, in vertical, 320 millimeters by, whoops, close that there, do that again, go from there to there, 320 by 220, so 320 by 220. So if you've got a bed that is that dimension, then great. If not, you'll probably need to split it, and I would probably split it down the middle there if you were to do a 6-pack configuration. But yeah, there we go. So let's now have a look at what it looks like over into the printing side of things. So here's the new panels all done. Sorry. So here's the new panels. I've got them 3D printed. This is white PLA. Let me just pan back. I really apologise for the camera work here. It is terrible. But here they are here. This is the new panels, 3mm MDF, straight out of my Fusion 3D model. I downloaded the DXF file for these so that I could just, because I did have to make some modifications to them, so I literally took a copy of the existing outline of my two halves and then redid these completely so that it matched on them, all of them together. I made a slight boo-boo actually on this one up here, so I've just had to locally widen that out with the drill, but that will be fine. Once it's all painted up, you won't even see it. That'll all then connect quite closely like that in the sim, and they'll all be behind it. So now what we have to do is paint it all up and then assemble, and I'll show you what it looks like in the sim and get it all fired up. Alright, here's the units now painted up, and used gloss paint, which I've used before. Probably would use matte next time. I've used the gloss as well, but I had some left over, so if you are doing it, probably advise you use the matte, not gloss, because it obviously gets some reflection, particularly if you've got some light around. So that's that. So they're now painted up. Now I've just got to assemble the gauges into it. I used wet and dry. Obviously I had some raised lettering there, which you can see before. It's not 100% as good as what a laser would do, but for what I need, it's pretty good. It gives the effect, and it's a little bit out of the way anyway, so I'm actually quite happy with that. And it means I can just have one single piece of PLA, use some wet and dry over the top of it to bring up the white lettering that you can see there, and obviously white PLA on the back. So let's get the gauges now installed into this and then get it into the sim. Right. Slight little problem. I thought I had everything sorted in the model, and obviously it was one particular thing that I missed. It's not going to be a major, although it is going to result in me completely reprinting these two panels, because on the back of the units, the gap here obviously needs to be equi-spaced either side of that, because you can see the tabs that I've got here that pick up on the mounting for the panel. When I offer this up, it's fouling, or this one here is fouling by this tab by about 3 millimeters. So I've got two ways of doing it. I can either shave this down or move this slightly out. Now, I could shave this down, but to be brutally honest, when I did paint this, and I haven't mentioned this before, but it did bend a little bit, and that's because I did this out in the sun. So I don't know if you can pick that up, but the panel itself is bent in the sun. So I'm being a bit lazy, so I'm going to reprint them anyway. I'm going to shift this gauge about 5mm that way. You won't even really notice that, and then that will fix that. Similarly, it's happened on the right-hand side as well. Again, as I offer this up, and I offer that up to the holes there, we've got it. This one here is fouling on that side by, again, about 3mm. So I just need to bring it over that way. So that's what the job's going to be. Move this gauge that way about 5mm, and then on the other gauge, which is on the left-hand side, move this gauge 5mm that way. So there'll be a slightly differential there, but again, I don't think to the naked eye you're really going to pick that up, and it'll resolve all the problem. That way I can keep the panel as it is. The reason I want to do it that way is because if I happen to be hacking into this and it breaks, then I'm in a world of hurt, because this whole panel would need to be replaced. So I really don't want to touch this panel now, leave it as it is. And I'd rather take the time and just reprint these again, repaint them. I've got enough there to do that, so there's no need to rush it. But I think instinctively you can see it's going to look pretty good. Once that's all in, and all up and closed up together, as you can see, that's going to look pretty impressive, I think, and mounted into the panel. So it's going to look good once it's finished. But yeah, let's get back and reprint these, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like round 2.
So this is the stuff that I use for painting up. It's fairly common for us to lean, good product. As you can see, I've got the gloss one here, so if you can get it, I'll get the matte one, but I've used the gloss, and just in the garage here now. I'm going to paint these things up relatively straightforward, just elevate them a little bit just so I can get around the edges properly, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, so let's get them painted up, see what it looks like. So that's them now painted up. As you can see, just let that dry. It won't take long to dry, but you can see the gloss, how it gives that sheen off, which is not the best. I'd use a matte in future, but it'll be okay once it's in the sim. But yeah, case in point, lesson learned, use a matte finish. You can see that glare that happens. Obviously for the lettering, I'll use a wet and dry, and I'll basically just use a wet and dry to expose the white underneath, which will expose the lettering. Should look pretty good. There's the lettering now revealed. As you can see, I've got the masking up all around it. Unfortunately, my 3D printer I lost. Where is it? I lost the there was a little C there, 4 degrees C. I lost the C. The C dropped off. So it's 4 degrees, but at least that's you're not going to see it, but anyway, slight little mishap there, I'm not going to worry about it. But there you go, I'll put all the tape off, show you what it looks like, finished product. That's it. Took about 10-15 minutes just to do it off. Could probably do a little bit more, but it's not too bad. It'll be nice and legible. There we go. There you go. That's it now. The white lettering is visible, as you can see, and generally readable. Once again, I'm pointing out the glare, so you notice the glare. So again, depending on the light angle, the gloss isn't the best, but unfortunately I lost my little C. Anyway, that's going to be behind the gauge, but actually most of this is behind the yoke anyway. You know, the yoke, the pilot side yoke's just about here, so you got a lot of that covered, but I'm not going to reprint that now. Anyway, there you go. Let's get all these gauges assembled and show you what that looks like.
Okay, so I actually forgot to video my gauges assembled, but I'll show you that in a moment before I put them into the simulator, but I will show you that in a moment in the next clip. But what I have got here is from Simionic's website itself, just to show their, I guess, 3-gauge standby gauges here. That's the front picture there, mounted, and obviously mine will look very similar in a moment when I show you that. They've got theirs, I think that's on a aluminium backing plate though, as opposed to mine, which is PLA. But more importantly, show you what it looks like at the back, and they're the 3 units that they've got there. Obviously I've got 4, and they're configured in a daisy chain. You can see the little data cable swinging between them there, going from one to the other. One gauge serves as the primary, so it's basically the one that's communicating to a USB port on the back of your PC. And the other two, you can plug them into your USB ports on your PC if you want to, or you can plug them into an independent USB power source, but they do need some small amount of power to obviously power the LCD screens. So that's pretty much what they look like there. So relatively straightforward. Let me now show you what it looks like for mine in the simulator, and I think you'll agree it looks pretty good. Let's get there now. Alright, before I show you this in the simulator, I just want to show you the software side of things and the bridge software that you need to be able to make these gauges work. It's relatively straightforward actually, and hats off to Simionic for doing it like this. It's pretty easy. So to the Simionic website you'll go, simionic.net, and then that'll bring you into this page here. Navigate yourself over to the download section, this one here, click that. And once that opens, it'll take a couple of seconds depending on your internet speed. I've obviously got the first two here because this is for the G1000, but we're not talking about that. We're just talking about standby gauges. So depending on whether you have FS2020, P3D, or FSX or X-Plane, you'll use two different versions. So I'm going to run you through the MSFS version because that's the software that I'm using at the moment. So that's the bridge file there, and so you simply will download that bridge and install it as it is. When you install it, you should come up with a file that looks like this. If you can see that icon down the bottom there. And then you literally will click that open and up it comes, and you'll get a dialog box that looks something like that. Now it's broken up into a couple of areas here. Over to the left hand side there you've got the G1000. Obviously that's off for me at the moment because I haven't got them switched on in the simulator. But importantly for the standby gauges, which you can see there, that's showing connected. So if you remember from before, you've got a primary standby gauge that's communicating to a USB, any USB port on your computer. And once that's done, the others that are daisy chaining off of that one in the linear fashion will pick up on it. So it's only one connection that's needed. The other ones are still needed though, obviously for power, because you've got to be able to power the LCD screen. But you can still plug those into your spare USB ports if you have them, or directly into USB power of some description. So as you can see, that's now connected. And once that's connected, that's pretty much it. If you've got the bridge running in FS2020, you should be able to take off and you should see your gauges working perfectly. Well, there you go. The standby gauge is fully installed into the simulator, and I think you'll agree it looks pretty good. I'm very happy with it. Hope you enjoyed this one. Look after yourselves, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.